The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, this is Tom Lane, DM2 Software's Vice President of Sales and Marketing. I would like to welcome everyone to today's Excise Tax Returns Filing webinar. Before I introduce today's presenters, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Because of the number of attendees we have on today's webinar, everyone's phones will stay on mute. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the question window that you see in the lower right of your screen. We'll try to answer everyone's questions at the end of the webinar. If we're unable to get to your question, we'll follow up with you individually after the webinar is over. Today's webinar is being recorded. As soon as the recording is ready, we'll post it on our YouTube channel, and we'll also post a copy of the presentation slides on our website. On that note, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Joining us from our new partner, Avalara, we have Matt Nelson. He's the Director of Solutions Engineering for Avalara. And then we also have Scott Clevenger, who's the Vice President of Business Development for Avalara. And then we have our own Rob Pierce, Vice President of DM2 Professional Services Group. On that note, I'd like to turn it over to Rob to talk a little bit about TaxLink. Actually, we'll have a quick view of our agenda, so if you could advance the slide, Scott. Thank you. So we talked about the partner introductions there. Rob is going to start out talking about TaxLink. TaxLink is a standard feature in all DM2 systems. It's part of our Petroleum module, which is really the core of our system. So I'll let Rob go ahead and talk about the capabilities that TaxLink has.
Thank you, Tom. So we're going to go into the mechanics of TaxLink in a few more slides. So this is going to be more of a high-level description of what it is. So as you're processing your receipts, bill ladings, and your disbursement, sales order invoices, TaxLink captures that information through an ETL utility, and it massages that data and presents it in a specialized table that's dedicated for tax reporting purposes. It's a great tool to use for creating tax schedules. You have customers filing in all 50 states, federal, District of Columbia. However, it does not do things such as create forms and returns. It creates tax schedule forms, but it does not do signature-ready forms. It doesn't have a lot of workflow and process involved in it. That's really where the Avalara team complements and takes tax reporting to its level. What TaxLink is really good with is capturing the data and then working with the DM2 team on reconciliation procedures to tie that transactional data back to your inventory and your general ledger. So that's the high-level overview, and we'll get a little bit deeper in a few slides there.
All right, great, Rob. Now we'll turn things over to Scott. He's going to give you a little background on Avalara. And then, as Rob mentioned, we'll get into the workflow of how we're passing information over to Avalara for the processing. So take it away, Scott.
Super. Thanks so much, Tom. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone, for dialing in. Very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today regarding the solutions and the exciting new partnership that we have in place with DM2. Before we get into the product, I kind of wanted to introduce folks to who is Avalara. Some of you probably are wondering who Avalara is. Avalara is a relatively new company in the world of tax that acquired a company called Excise Tax last year. Excise Tax was the tax business unit of the Fuel organization. Avalara is strictly focused on tax and tax calculation and tax reporting, and they saw Excise Tax and the Excise Tax compliance and tax calculation engines as great additions to their portfolio. So we joined, the Excise Tax business unit joined Avalara last year, and we've been very excited to be part of a true tax organization since that time. Avalara is privately held. It was founded in 2004. They focused originally on SaaS-based tax transactional requirements for business to consumer types of transactions, so a lot of the e-commerce types of transactions. Since that foundation and the original products that they brought to market then, we've really focused on expanding through acquisition and through adding new features and functions to the existing products to make sure that we can have a hand in every single taxable transaction that occurs throughout the world. We do provide end-to-end suite of solutions that help manage very complex tax obligations. It ensures compliance with tax authorities within the United States, North America, and internationally. And we do integrate into several leading accounting, ERP, e-commerce, and other business applications now for the purposes of why we're so excited about being here today. You know, DM2 is one of those critical key industry participants that we have been working with outside of a partnership for quite some time now, and putting some formality around that and officially certifying the interface and the integration is something that we're very, very excited to be working with them on, and I think this is going to be a terrific thing for DM2, for Avalara, as well as for our shared customers. What makes us unique? We have roughly 10,000 plus customers throughout the United States. So while we are considered the new guys on the block, the reality is that we have grown very quickly. We're experiencing significant growth on a year-by-year basis, and our customers are extraordinarily satisfied with the solutions that we're bringing to them. We do process billions of transactions annually, so when one of the biggest concerns with our customers is performance. When on a single day during the holidays we process 32 million transactions on a single day, we typically are able to alleviate a lot of those concerns. So we process billions of transactions annually. We partner with several companies, and one of the things that we really focus on is establishing out-of-the-box connectors, and that's one of the goals with this partnership with DM2 is to make sure that a lot of time and energy can be spent on establishing connectivity between a back office application and the tax application that a customer may select. Through this partnership with DM2, we're really working and striving towards taking all of the complexity out of making the two systems talk, so that through TaxLink and through the connector that we're building, or have built rather, excuse me, that it provides as close to out-of-the-box integration as we can get to, and that saves a lot of time and it saves a lot of money on implementations. And we are recommended by software application resellers, CPAs, and business consultants. As part of our ecosystem, we really strive very hard to make sure that the EYs, the PwCs, the large CPA firms of the world, as well as the consulting organizations and the applications and the resellers are all striving to say who is the best company that can provide the solution that you need in any specific instance relating to tax. We want them to be able to recommend Avalara, and we're saying that that is the case in the market today. So specifically, the integration that we're going to be talking about today, and the integration and the partnership that we built with DM2, is around what is called the Returns Excise solution of Avalara. And this is the old, for those of you that may have been familiar with XiTax, this is the old XiTax compliance product. Avalara, again, purchased it and has made a significant number of improvements on it, but it generates signature-ready tax returns, or electronic files, that can be submitted for fuel transactions across all North American jurisdictions. We're very excited when we say North America now, because historically we've been able to say United States. We have recently added all of the Canadian returns for fuel transactions as well, and we continue to expand into other areas, geographies, to make sure that electronic filing and signature-ready tax returns can be covered for our North American clients and our North American customer needs. We provide very comprehensive coverage. It does automate that filing process from end to end. So when you think about the filing process that you have to go through, the back office application can oftentimes get you part of the way there, or part of the way that you need to get in order to get to the data that you need in order to file your taxes. We fill that void in taking the data and being able to move it all the way through that chain to providing those true signature-ready returns that are in compliance with the legal fiscal requirements of the taxing authorities. Through using this tool, it does support audit activities and amendments. We do provide a tax content update service. So as these forms are changing, as the content changes, as the legislation changes on where certain things flow from the back office application from DM2 into our product, we're constantly monitoring that and making sure that your returns are going to be complete and accurate in all cases. Through the connector that we are working with DM2 on certifying, that is an automated type of transaction import, so it doesn't require a lot of manual user interaction in order to get that data into our solution. And one of the key features that we have in that product is customizable workflows. Typically, depending upon the size of your organization, taking a return process from extraction, transformation, and loading of the data all the way through to signature and treasury functions, there can be a lot of steps in that, and sometimes when you're working across multiple jurisdictions or you have a lot of different returns that you're responsible for filing, it can get confusing and some steps can be forgotten. And so through adding the customizable workflows to our the Returns Excise solution, it really enables customers to truly manage and understand where they are throughout their filing process from start to finish. Some key features, and I won't spend a lot of time on these because Matt's going to be showing you these as part of the demonstration. As I mentioned before, we have built-in support for all major U.S. jurisdictions for both electronic as well as paper-based filing, including motor fuel excise, X-stars, and alternative fuels returns. One of the really cool things that we're going to focus on today is on that electronic filing piece. Historically, customers have had to really go through a gut-wrenching exercise in trying to understand what's going into an EDI file or into an XML file that's being sent off to the states, particularly if there's questions that the state comes back with or the taxing authority comes back with to say, this line within your EDI file is not in line with anything else. We've added some really neat features and tools to help manage the EDI files and the XML files, and Matt's going to spend some time showing you specifically those features. We do have that tax update service, so whenever new forms change, whenever new forms are added, whenever there are rates or rules are modified, we do monitor those and pass those out as part of our monthly tax update service. We do have certified DM2 integration. This is very exciting for us, but it is established and proven integration. We've worked very closely with DM2, and DM2's worked very closely with us to make sure that this integration functions as we would both expect it to function. As you can expect from both of our organizations, we're constantly striving to learn from those lessons in the field and improve upon that integration. So this is very exciting thing for us. We do have a flexible scenario-based architecture, and the reason we built this product on scenarios rather than what would be considered standard rules is for a typical petroleum type of transaction, there could be multiple different types of things that need to be factored in. And the standard if-then-else type of Boolean logic won't ensure that all of the permutations and combinations of events can be considered as part of the whole. And so our scenario-based architecture, which is very flexible, easily modifiable, and easily maintainable by us, is the direction that we've gone, and through our customers, we've had a lot of success using that. The workflow status dashboard, and this is where Matt's going to start us out in the demonstration, provides easy visibility and notification into the tax process. Where are you in that process? What are the next steps in getting to where you need, which is the return generation, review, approval, and filing of those. So it's a great one-stop shop for being able to view where you are in your returns process at any given point in time throughout the month. We also have a schedule query wizard, which is a really amazing reporting tool that helps you analyze the data that's coming in. It's a great tool for audit defense purposes as well as customer support activities. And as I mentioned before, Avalara is heavy on the software as a service or SaaS option. Typically, over the last several years, we've seen a lot of organizations start to move to SaaS because there's a lot of savings that can be realized from an IT perspective in allowing someone else to own those servers and manage those servers and be responsible for all the software and the server and the IT infrastructure that's required in order to run some of these things. So this is a cost-saving opportunity as well for companies that move to Avalara Returns Excise. It allows them to, in a lot of cases, move away from a deployed instance and utilize and leverage the best-in-breed technologies that are available on the market today. Rob, I think this is a point you're going to talk through.
Rob, are you still with us there?
I think you might be on mute.
I think he's on mute, yes.
Thank you for reminding me. So this is a graphical representation of the DM2 ERP and how the data flows through the ERP, through the TaxLink utility, and ultimately out to Avalara. So at the top left, that's pretty much your master files, your customer master files, inventory, suppliers, and so forth. And right below that, as you process a bill of lading and a sales order, it's gathering information from those master files. So for example, a sales order, I could enter in a customer, a product, and a quantity, 3 pieces of information, yet almost 100 pieces of information will populate on that sales order form. That's the power of an integrated ERP. So having accurate setups is really critical to capturing accurate data to flow through the system out to your tax reporting output. So as the processing takes place and we hit the update button, it's going to submit those bill of lading receipt tables and the sales order invoice out to the history tables. So on the top left, we have our master files, and in the bottom left, we have our history tables. In the middle of this graphic, there's TaxLink. So TaxLink is an ETL utility, stands for extract, transform, and load. It doesn't just grab the data as it is and present it. It actually manipulates it. So for example, if I'm doing a split load BOL, so that's where I pick it up from one supply point, maybe I'm picking it up in Washington, I deliver part of it in Washington, I deliver part of it in Oregon. So on the customer's invoice, that's one transaction line. But for tax reporting purposes, that needs to be 2 separate records because one of those fuel movements went from Washington to Washington and the other fuel movement went from Washington to Oregon. So that's part of what TaxLink does. It grabs the history tables for receipts and disbursements. It adds additional information from the master files, such as suppliers FEIN, carriers FEIN, or customers, or the products FTA codes. It retransforms that data into motor fuel tax friendly format, and then it creates a specialized work table. So this is the large database on the right. In the older framework, it's called FTZ. In the modern framework, it's called FT_TaxLink extract data. So that's a temporary work table that is built from the ETL. So for example, most people would run TaxLink for a given period for 1 month because that's how most people file their schedules. So we could run TaxLink for the month of July, and in July, you to see all of the tax reporting, receipt, and disbursement data in FTZ for only that one period. Once it's in FTZ, or the TaxLink extract data, it's an open database, ODBC access. So you could write Crystal reports against it and file with paper or use Crystal to push it out electronically. It could go out to a spreadsheet. Again, you could print them out or you could pass those spreadsheets on electronically. Some people just do direct exports of simple CSV or ASCII files into other state solutions. So there's some options you could do with it, but probably the topic of today is for more sophisticated tax reporting needs. There's a DM2 connector where this FTZ data can flow into Avalara. So having said that, the output from DM2 is going to be the input to Avalara. it's very important that we get this data accurate before we send it on to the Avalara team. So part of working with DM2 is data integrity checks and exception reporting and tying back to inventory and tying back to general ledger. So it's not just a technical exercise of exporting data. There's quite a bit of data integrity and internal controls process work going on inside the ERP before we pass the data on to Avalara. So Tom?
All right, actually we're back to Scott now.
Yep, I think
Matt's going to, Rob.
Matt's going to talk to the next slide, and then I think we're going to jump into the demo.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Scott, you have control of the slide, so just advance them when I give you the nod. So, as he was saying, the repository database that the DM2 transactions are held into, from that point in time, TaxLink, there's the interface between DM2 and Avalara, loads the transactions within Avalara Returns Excise and processes them. Scott, can you advance? And at that point, it determines and assigns the schedules. That was the scenario-based architecture that Scott mentioned previously. And it validates the schedules, making sure that the information required for the particular return is there. And then you generate the return, and then review and approve. And at that point, you can file a return, either electronic or paper return. We have EDI and XML. And Scott, if you want to make me the presenter. Oh, and the central data repository, within that, we hold the schedules and returns, rules, rates, forms, role-based security, business partners, exemptions and exceptions, and locations. And without further ado, I'm going to show my screen.
I think one thing that I wanted to say there as a result, because, or in addition to that, you know, Rob brought this up, right? We're heavily, we need to make sure that the data is uniform, right, throughout the entire process. And the filing process really, you know, to a degree begins with the entering of that sales order all the way through to the billing of the customer, or the procurement to pay process, right? Making sure that the integrity of that end-to-end process is whole, and that the data that is necessary in order to enable proper filing is correct. So where we pick up that data, again, it's a continuation of that process all the way through to the electronic or paper return that's submitted to the jurisdiction. I think it's important to understand that we do fit into those processes, and we're very reliant upon making sure that the data that's entered as part of the actual transactions that are occurring within the DM2 ERP are whole and consistent and complete.
Okay. And for this illustration, I'm using a transaction being pulled from Tennessee for delivery into Montgomery, Alabama. And under this hypothetical scenario, you own the carriers, you own the terminals, you own the product, you're pulling it with you, and you're hauling it with your truck, and we have gasoline and diesel fuel. And on that single transaction, we could have up to 13, 14 different returns that would be valid for that return. And so, but the beautiful thing about this system is only one transaction for gasoline was loaded, and only one transaction for diesel was loaded on the receipt side, and same for the disbursement side. And with that, we're able to generate all of these returns just from that transaction, that transactional information that was imported in. So when you activate the DM2 interface to Returns Excise and the transaction are loaded, the returns are automatically created from the data elements loaded into Avalara Returns Excise through the DM2 interface. So all of these returns automatically created and instantly posted up here on the dashboard window, showing you the workflow when these returns are due. You'll notice over here some are due in a later month, in March, as well as the U.S. excise tax return is due quarterly. So the same, as I said, the same transaction was being used to populate multiple returns at the same time, as opposed to having to import a single transaction multiple times for different returns. And that's where the scenario-based architecture comes in. When the transaction is loaded in, those data elements look at the relevant origin, destination, the seller licensing information, the buyer licensing information, who's the position holder, and from that determines which returns are supposed to be filed. I'm not going to go into it, but it's contained underneath this little screen right here where that functionality is built into the system. The workflow calendar automatically populates with the returns that are due, and once loaded, the returns are ready for evaluation by the tax analyst. Now, this is another key feature here, is if you're the tax manager, you can also create workflow emails to give you notifications where the tax analyst is in the filing process. So the return is ready to be viewed, an automated email can generate. The return has been generated and it's been filed, another email can be sent to you automatically through the system and seamless. After the tax manager has approved the return to be filed, you can just, and first I'm going to generate the return, so we just go here, Sessions, and in this instance I'm going to include all the schedules, and if there's anything I need to change, like enter an administrative allowance, change who the taxpayer contact is, as well as the history log, and if I want to add any comments to this particular record, I can. And I'll just save and generate. Return generation request has been made, and it's passed. We'll click on there, and now I can right-click here, and now we can actually view a paper-ready return ready for signatures. In this particular instance, I generated the Tennessee Department of Revenue distributor monthly tax return. Has all the schedules attached to it, etc. And once, if you prefer reviewing paper, you can print this out, save it, etc. Whatever you need to do with it. And at that point, you can go back and generate the e-file itself. Now all I do is just add a new record. Now you'll notice that all of these returns, I had previously generated all the returns for the exporter, terminal operator, and transporter returns. If I want to do the combined EDI and generate all of these at the same time, or if I just want to generate one right now, I can. And also the system knows which version of EDI. That was for 2014. We're in 2015 now, so it knows automatically to pick that particular version. And I will generate the EDI now. And as it's processing, a few other things that I can point out is if you have particular product codes that you need mapped to the FTA codes required by the particular jurisdictions, you can map those. As Scott mentioned, we have all the rates. Those are updated regularly. And we'll refresh this, and it's passed. Now all I have to do is either click on the record there, or I can look at the e-file submissions, but for purposes of ease, we'll go directly to it. Now, at this point, what Scott was mentioning is kind of a really neat functionality that we have for this. It's the viewer. Now, I can download this right now and submit it to the state, but if I want to review it one more time, just click on this, and I can go to a particular bill of lading, thinking right there. I can actually click on a particular bill of lading and look at the record again. And now I can actually change the EDI itself. So in the rare instance that the state that you're filing in rejects a particular EDI, they're going to tell you what line number was rejected. With this functionality, you can go directly to that line number and correct it. Now, just note, as kind of Avalara best recommended policies here, is you would want to, if you update it here, it's going to immediately lock the return, and you're going to have to regenerate the return and regenerate the EDI. And we recommend this just so all the records will stay the same, and at that point in time, you also update your system of record. So I'm not going to change anything in this. And then let's just download it, open, and that's what it looks like. Pretty common stuff. Now, at that point, after you've accepted it, mark it as submitted. We'll give it a second here. Okay, I'm going to click on the record again, and now we have a new tab here called TNFTP. I click on that, and after you've submitted it to the state of Tennessee, they're going to send you back an acknowledgement that they've received it. Well, now you can also save that acknowledgement. You go here, Tennessee, good to go. Within the system, so now all the records are combined together, the return, the EDI, and the acknowledgement by the state of Tennessee that, in fact, it was passed, it did pass, and it was submitted correctly. I'm going to refresh this. And it's good, it's passed. Now at this point, I can go back to the home screen. And now that return is ready to be marked as filed. All I have to do is file that return, mark as filed. Now, all the data that's associated with that transaction, whether it be business entities, locations, products, quantities, license, etc., all that information is now locked in our system. Nobody can change it. None of your tax analysts can change it unless the tax manager comes in and unfiles that tax return. Now, in the event that you had some particular loads that didn't make the closeout date from the extract, from the ETL tool, any transactions in the past that come through the system will automatically create amended sessions for that particular jurisdiction. And to show you that we also have the XML version, I can generate this one too, download it, and we also can view this one also. Same thing for the XML. If we wanted to actually go into a line item and change the XML, we could. But once again, you're going to need to regenerate the return, but it won't let you file the return because the system's going to lock it. And also, one last point is our retention policy that's set by you. So if we have certain clients that want, the records saved for a particular point in time, we can save it to that particular point in time, or if you want to purge those records thereafter, we can do that too. Scott, that's it.
Super. Thanks so much. I think everyone can see here, one of the biggest benefits from my perspective, having worked on, the industry side of the table, when you start having, particularly, look at this. This is just a an Alabama, Tennessee type of transaction. The number of returns that can be required and the number of due dates that can be associated with these returns when you start doing multiple, cross-jurisdictional types of transactions can become very enormous, right? And having the visual representation of where you are throughout that entire end-to-end process really does help tax organizations become more efficient, have true visibility into where you are at any given point in time with any return. As you can see, we're closing in on the 20th. Some of these are indicated by the color red over on the left side, on the calendar side. We manage kind of alerts as well by indicating some of these, hey, you haven't gotten to this point by this date. If something's green, hey, you're in great situation. But if it's red or yellow, things start to become more urgent. And we help through color coding, through various other actions, through workflows that are enabled and customizable on a client-by-client basis. It really does create that opportunity to have a true visual representation of where you are in your filing process from the point that the data is imported from DM2 all the way through to the point that you have officially filed a return and any amendments that may be associated with that return. So thank you very much, Matt. Tom, if you could pass me back control.
Okay, Scott, it's back at you.
Thank you. So, as as Matt indicated, right, we have this tax process management, and I think it's critical to take a look at this screen again. It does show, easy visibility into where you are at any given point in time throughout the filing process. And it does key off of due dates. And through having that visibility, it really does create, a true process-controlled application of events against approvals and filing deadlines, and make sure that you're compliant with all of those activities. From an analytical point of view, and I mentioned this before, the reporting functionality within the product is something that, unfortunately, with the short amount of time we have on today's webinar, we really can't get into. But the reporting piece is something that we have a significant number of customers use, and they really rely upon this to provide them additional data components that they want to pass out as part of their call from DM2 into Avalara Returns Excise in order to be able to have additional data elements to analyze as part of their overall returns process. And so the Schedule Query Wizard really opens up the ability to, in a very tabulature type of format, right, where tax people tend to like to use a tabulature format, to be able to sort and filter and start looking at the granular details, if necessary, as to what's making up specific schedules within a return, and analyzing that data and truly understanding exactly what's driving those totals. This really helps with reconciliation activities. It helps with validation activities associated with making sure the data is correct and complete. And it really eliminates the need for, very special IT projects to go in and give you the data that you need in order to be successful in analyzing the data to make sure your returns are truly complete and ready to be submitted. So our Schedule Query Wizard is an amazing reporting tool that, when used in collaboration with the tools that DM2 provides you with, can provide you with a true complete picture of exactly what's being included on those schedules if you use our solution, and give you those tools to be able to analyze that information. So in summary, have a couple more slides we'll go through, and then I'll pass it back to Tom to wrap things up. When we think about compliance activities, right, typically it's a cost bucket within organizations. Filing taxes is not a non-revenue generating activity, and because of that, typically organizations try to, avoid at all costs spending money on building an automated solution around compliance. The reality is compliance activities can be revenue enabling because you're spending, you're creating productivity and efficiencies within your tax filing process that are inherently risk mitigating through making sure that your resources are tasked to analyzing the data and working that data through and managing that data via controls and workflow all the way through up to submitting those returns at the end of the month in a very efficient process. It really does create an improvement in productivity. It eliminates all that manual data collection and the tax calculation or tax verification that may go along with that activity. It does reduce tax errors and the risks of penalties. I have lived through some nightmare situations when I worked in industry where you make one error on one big deal because of the way that auditors look at transactions. The extrapolation of that across your volume of transactions can result in very large fines and penalties. And through the automated tools and the recurring, consistent, transparent application of scenarios within Avalara Returns Excise, you can really ensure that you're minimizing the risk of that penalty and those fines down to an absolute minimum. Not only because you're filing your taxes on time and accurately, but because you're also able to really focus on, risk mitigation activities outside of the filing process. So where resources are typically tasked with spending hours and hours and hours every month focusing on collecting data, putting it into returns, and filing those, because of the automation of the process and the controls and the workflow that enables that efficient, productive application of data into the return, tax resources can typically now start spending time on other risk mitigation activities outside of the compliance function. Through working with DM2 and establishing this certified integration, there is a reduction in implementation time and cost. We have that established connectivity. We have the data import tools. We have the built-in jurisdictional support. As we've alluded to before, we have a very flexible scenario-based architecture. Through that scenario-based architecture and the flexibility and the number of customers that we have across the United States, it really does enable us to not have to go through a severe mapping exercise every time a customer utilizes this solution. And it does reduce that time that's typically associated with implementation. Again, it enables business agility. When you move into a new jurisdiction, the product is there and ready for you. You don't have to go through the research. You don't have to go through a lot of the activities that are associated with somebody's selling this product into this state now, or we're now doing business in a state that I've never done before, work in before, and I'm finding out at the last minute, because the Avalara Returns Excise solution is already being used in those jurisdictions, already has the rules set up. It's very easy. It's one thing you don't have to worry about when your business is growing. And because of that, we see a lot of new biofuel organizations moving towards our product. We see a lot of emerging product customers that are looking specifically at Returns Excise, primarily because they know that as their business grows, this is one piece of the overall complex formula of growing your business that you don't have to worry about now. And it reduces IT costs by eliminating IT projects for tax reporting, eliminating your hardware costs associated with owning and maintaining the solution you have in place today, and all the application management associated with a hosted, or I'm sorry, a deployed type of solution. Through using our SaaS deployment, it is a money saver associated with your IT spend relating to these types of activities. In summary, we do have some key benefits associated with the product. We've talked through most of these. I want to touch upon one thing here before we wrap up on our side. One of the great pieces of the relationship with DM2 so far has been, the realization that historically, when we were not part of Avalara, when this product was not part of Avalara, we kind of had a different mentality around pricing, and it's been great to work with Tom and Rob and others within the organization, because they did have some concerns, and we had some concerns as well internally about the pricing that we had historically applied to many of our customers. One of the great things about Avalara is its focus on making sure that customers of all sizes can utilize our solutions. And through that process and through working with the DM2 resources, I believe that we have arrived at a great pricing structure now that ensures that customers of all size can utilize the Returns Excise solution to file their taxes, whether you're in one state filing one return or you're in 50 states filing 200. We have pricing structures to make sure that we're aligned perfectly with your business model, and that's supportable across all aspects of the industry. So, having said that, I appreciate your time. I'll advance it to the next slide, Tom, and let you take back control.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Very, very nice job. Excellent overview. Now, this is a point of our webinars where we always promote the upcoming webinar. We've got another webinar scheduled for March 12th. same time, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. And this webinar is on a new feature that we introduced in our 4.50 release called Sales Order Dispatch Manager. And the Sales Order Dispatch Manager function is basically designed to make it more efficient to manage your pricing, create sales orders and quotes, and dispatch pickups and deliveries. What it does is gives you a consolidated view or a unified view of your pricing and all your rack information to allow you to make the best dispatch decisions possible. It helps you maximize your margins by providing you with an easy way to search for the lowest rack price. And then it also helps you fine-tune your pricing, taking into account your product costs as well as your freight costs, so you can price your product so you can win more business. This webinar is also going to include a brief demonstration of the standard feature. Once again, this is available in all systems 4.5 and later. And we would invite you to join us on Thursday, March 12th at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. When I send out the follow-up message that lets you know that the recording for this webinar and the presentation slides are available, it'll also have a link so you can register for this webinar as well. And then we'll be promoting it several times with some of the emails that we send out between now and the webinar there. Scott, if you go ahead and advance to the next slide. We'll open things up for questions and answers here, and we do have a couple of questions that have come in. First question that came in is from, and I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Jignesha with Luke Oil. And they're asking, how will this new connector affect the logic they already have set up for their Avalara connection? Obviously, a current customer of Avalara.
Well, that's, I'll go ahead and field this one. That's one of the great things about the relationship that we've historically had with DM2. You know, we've been kind of, our two products have been talking for, you know, quite a long time. And part of this exercise was to make sure that the impact to our existing customers is completely minimized as much as possible. So much so that the connector that is currently being utilized in the market today is the one that we're working on certifying as we speak, and so, or have certified. So the impact to existing customers is non-existent at this point in time, and we're going to continually strive to make sure that any future changes between either product are always going to be evaluated, and the connection or connector will be constantly monitored and updated by both parties to make sure that we never fall out of sync.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. And actually, second question from Jignesha is, what is the timeline of when these new features will be rolled out?
So the features that we highlighted in the overview today are currently available in the latest release of the Returns Excise solution. The connector that is certified is currently available to the market, and I believe at Luke Oil is currently being implemented or has been implemented. I would need to check and find out where you are in the project. One of the things that we strive to do on our side, and I know DM2 does as well, is continual product improvement. And so we're always adding features. We're always listening to our customers. One of the things that we've recently added is the ability to mass file all of the returns. So if you don't want to go in on a case-by-case basis and generate each return individually, you can just select them all and say, go ahead and generate everything, and it's just one click. So the features that you saw today are currently in the product. On a quarterly basis, we are typically adding new features to the solution as well. Now, those typically will not impact the connector. They're just additional components and features that that further enable some aspects of the product, as well as you know, some things that certain customers have asked for that we think are a great idea to go ahead and add to the product. Those are coming out on a quarterly basis as well.
Okay, a couple more questions. This one's probably more for Rob. How does this work with card lock activity, which in 4.3 does not flow to FTZ? That question came in from Lisa over at Associated. Rob, you may have to take yourself off of mute again.
Yeah, I'm not aware that we are flowing card lock data directly out of the card lock tables over to Avalara yet. I know that was on our future discussion points. If your card lock is integrated through the sales order module, then those gallons would be flowing through the normal FTZ.
Okay, and this second question coming in from Lisa is, what is the normal testing method to ensure accuracy prior to going live?
On the DM2 side?
Oh, well, I think that's probably a question for both sides. I know you touched on the setups and how important that getting everything set up correctly is because of how it all flows into the FTZ file.
Yeah, so I'll speak to it from the DM2 side and let the Avalara team talk about their side. So as the data volumes are growing and everybody's expanding geographically and there's just a larger volume of data, there's more opportunity for errors to get into the data stream and flow into the tax reports. So we're trying to catch that stuff early in the process. So a lot of customers are building exception reports that are running on daily events, maybe with Sage Intelligence or with Sage Alerts. They're looking for setups that are bad before anybody even processes a transaction with it. And then after the transaction, we're building exception reports, trying to capture it on a weekly basis so that even before it gets into the tax FTZ, we've done some kind of correction. And then we also build exception reports into FTZ itself and give you balancing schedules for the sole purpose of tying back to inventory and tying back to general ledger. So by the time that we're ready to hand it over to the Avalara team, you should have a pretty confident data set.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And then Scott or Matt, you want to speak to the
Tom, can you read the question one more time?
Sure. What is the normal testing method to ensure accuracy prior to going live on the system?
Typically what we've seen in the past, and the most successful way to do it, is take legacy data from a previous period that's already been filed, that's already been approved by the taxing authority, and then we generate a return from that legacy data to make sure the configuration is right in the Avalara Returns Excise. Do that for about two or three periods, and do some cross-checking, making sure everything's populating exactly the same way as you filed those returns, and you should be good to go.
All right, excellent. That looks like all the questions we've got for now. So I just want to remind everybody that today's webinar has been recorded. Once the recording is available, I'll post it along with a copy of today's presentation on our YouTube channel and our website. And then I'll send around the message to let everybody know when they're available. And as I said, there'll be a link to register for our next webinar in there as well. That should be probably sometime tomorrow afternoon. I should have all that information out to you. And I know we covered a lot of material and some great options available there for all of us. And I know that you'll probably think of questions after the webinar is over. If you do have any questions or would like more information on this topic, please feel free to email us at sales@dm2.com, and we'll follow up with you. One other thing that I would like to mention is we've had a lot of interest over the years for another Avalara service by the name of Avatax. It is a sales tax determination service that they work with that, as I said, we've had several customers express interest over the years on that. And we had looked into developing it on older non-framework versions. The new version that we're just releasing is our version 2013, and it's fully framework architecture that would allow us to make the changes necessary to work with the Avatax service a lot easier. So we have opened up a dialogue with with Scott and his group to create a connector that would allow us to use, or allow customers using our system to connect to their Avalara sales tax determination service. And we're looking at probably a summer release before we're ready to have that going. So I just want to give everybody the heads up that we're actively pursuing that now, and we should have more for you in the summer. And we'll kick that off with another webinar just like that to introduce everybody to that. But one thing that some of you may be aware of already is Avalara is actually a Sage development partner. So the Avalara service is actually sold through the Sage distribution channel. So that is a product that we'll be working with Sage with once we've developed the connector with Avalara or with Avalara. So on that note, I would like to thank Scott and Matt and Rob for doing an excellent job with the overviews and delving into the actual product demonstration there. That's really good stuff. And I would like to thank everyone for attending today's Returns Excise Filing webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.